Hi, welcome to our Plant Pure Kitchen Live. I'm Kim Campbell, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm excited that you're here and cooking with us. I have a request. If you are cooking along with us and really enjoying it, take a lot of pictures, share it on social media, tag me. I'm Plant Pure Chef on Instagram, on Facebook, and we love seeing your pictures, and that would be great. Today we're making one of my favorite, well, I always say these are my favorite recipes, but I tend to put up the things that I really enjoy. This one is an enchilada mole, and the star of the show is the mole sauce. So we're going to start with the mole sauce first. If you've never had a mole sauce, I'm going to try to describe it. It's deep, it's rich, it's savory, it's a little spicy, not a lot spicy, it's earthy, it's got a lot of tones in it. Traditionally, it can have anywhere between 25 and 50 ingredients. I think I've got around 13 if you don't count the water. It's the quick, easy version. It's what I order when I go out to a restaurant. I love to get enchiladas with spinach and mushrooms with mole sauce. But when you order it in a restaurant, they usually have a lot of oil in it, and it's probably not the healthiest. So I wanted to come up with my own healthy version. So we'll get started with that today. I hope you have all your vegetables pre-cut and chopped, because if you don't, I'm going to beat you to it because I already did mine. So I've got my pan getting really hot, because the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make the mole sauce, and we're going to caramelize the onions because we want them to get sweet. So I had a really big onion. I know it said one onion, but this was one onion, but it looks a lot bigger than one onion. This is hot, so as soon as we put this onion in here, it's going to start caramelizing. I have it on high. You can see how quick it's going to cook. This is going to go fast. I'm going to deglaze. And I always like to keep my pan really good and hot, because that's what brings out the sugars in your onion. You know, I made a mole sauce a couple weeks ago, and I didn't cook the onion. I just put it in the blender. I suppose you can do that if you really want to save on time, but I think you want to caramelize them to get the best results. Okay, it's almost done. I turned it down a little bit. And then I'm going to throw my garlic in there, because I just turned it down, and the garlic, you don't have to put the garlic when you're in the onions. You can just put them right straight in the blender. So a little story I have to share. I like to read about the history of a dish. So I had to read about the history of a mole sauce. And there's a lot of legends and stories, but I'll tell you the one that I like the most. It happened in the 18th century. This was when they said the mole sauce was born. In a convent with nuns, poor nuns. I'm going to turn this off. They were poor nuns, and they found out that the archbishop was coming to visit them. And they really wanted to impress him. But they didn't have a lot in the house, and they were poor. So they prayed to the angels. And so the angels, I guess, guided them to make this mole sauce. And they opened up their cupboards, and they saw some dried fruit. They saw nuts. They saw dried chilies, bread. What else? Lots of spices, and they threw it all in a pot and came up with this mole sauce. And I don't think they had really high-speed blenders in the 18th century, but that's kind of a story and it was in Pueblo, Mexico. So it's kind of a story that keeps getting retold, and that's the story I like. So, all right, so enough with my stories. People who know me know I like to tell stories. So we're going to take the onion out and put it right in your blender. And like I said, you could do it raw, but I just think this gives it a nice, sweet flavor. And the reason we're doing this ahead is because I want to get it blended, I want to get it smooth, and I want to let it cook on the stove and simmer. And if I leave some of these onions in here, that's okay, because we're going to cook something else in there in a little bit. So I have my spices lined up. So what I'm going to put in this first is a can of tomato sauce. You can use, if you want to use diced tomatoes, you can use diced tomatoes, you can use tomato sauce. You're going to blend it anyway, so it'll come out fine. It'll be a little bit thicker if you use diced tomatoes. And then a cup of water, and I always want to get all the good stuff out of the can, so just rinse it out of the can. 1 cup of water. This is a thick sauce too. You can thin it out if you want it thinned out. And then 3 tablespoons of chili powder. Chili powder is not made from just one spice. It's one of those spice blends again. It has oregano, and it has cayenne, and it has garlic, and it has chilies, all sorts of things in it. And it tends to be, chili powder is mild. So if you're adding chili powder to something, don't think that it's going to be super, super spicy. If you were adding, I'm trying to remember the name of the, ancho chili powder is not spicy either, but red cayenne pepper will get really spicy. And then I'm going to add cocoa powder, 3 tablespoons of just straight unsweetened cocoa powder. I know, that's what makes it rich and deep and brown. You cannot substitute the cocoa powder. In Mexico, they actually use Mexican chocolate. They use hard chocolate in it. And then, this you can't substitute either, is the peanut butter. You can use almond butter if you want, but that gives it that kind of nice nutty flair, and a mole tends to be a little bit nutty. So I used all natural peanut butter. And then maple syrup, and I believe it calls for 2 tablespoons of pure maple syrup. Something else you could do, if you don't want to use maple syrup and you want to use dried fruit, I would use 1/4 cup of raisins, because that will give it that nice sort of fruity flavor. And then we'll move over to our spices, and I have a teaspoon of ancho chili powder. Ancho chili powder is a little smoky, it's mild, it's a little bit of an earthy flavor to it. It's not spicy at all. This is a poblano pepper, and when they roast it and they dry them and they grind them up, then you have ancho chili powder. And these are not really spicy. These are one of the milder peppers. So then we have cumin powder, 1 teaspoon of cumin powder. And cinnamon. This is where you get your sweet. A lot of moles use cloves, they use cinnamon, they use allspice. I'm going to use cinnamon, and I used a full, I think it calls for a full teaspoon. Oh, half a teaspoon.
Hey, Kim.
Yes.
Just a quick program note here. We just realized, because we had switched this over to a different platform, that the chat function was not working initially. It is now. If people reload, that chat functionality should come on.
Okay. All right. I wondered why we weren't getting any questions.
Yeah, maybe just pause for just a few seconds, so that people have a chance to reload, and hopefully it'll work. Maybe you could tell another story again. Maybe we can go again here.
Yeah. So mole sauce is also they say it was a coming together of the indigenous groups in Mexico and some of the Europeans that came in too. So they had the influence, the spices and the flavors had the influence from Europeans and from the indigenous people of Mexico. So it's really, really interesting. And I watched several YouTubes on how to make a mole sauce because I was trying to learn how to do it, and I thought, oh, I could never do that, because they celebrated and they used this sauce for celebrations in Mexico, and it would take them all day to make just one small mole sauce. You can buy mole paste. You can buy dried mole powder and add water to it, so you don't have to go through this process. But I think this is a fairly easy process. Can I go forward or not?
Yes, Elizabeth just said thanks, because apparently it worked for her when she reloaded it. So as long as everyone reloads their page, they should get that chat.
Should I do a recap
box
of what's in the blender?
Maybe do that.
Okay, so here's a recap. I sauteed the onions, and if some of you are a little bit behind, you can catch up. I sauteed the onions just to get them caramelized and sweet, and then I put them in a blender. And then I added a can of tomato sauce, a 15-ounce can of tomato sauce, a cup of water, 3 tablespoons of chili powder, 3 tablespoons of cocoa powder. Do not leave that out. And then 2 tablespoons of peanut butter, all natural peanut butter. You can use almond butter. Someone asked me yesterday if they could use tahini. I think you can. It might lend a little different flavor. Maple syrup, and if you don't want to use maple syrup, you can use 1/4 cup of raisins. Ancho chili powder, a teaspoon of cumin, half a teaspoon of cinnamon, allspice, an eighth of a teaspoon of allspice, which actually has kind of a sort of a clovey, earthy smell. Yes.
Mary Beth wants to know. She said she couldn't find ancho chili powder. What can she do?
So if you can't find ancho chili powder, just add a little more regular chili powder. And then put maybe a half a teaspoon of smoked paprika, because that'll give it that smoky flavor. And ancho chili powder is just a little bit smoky and a little bit earthy. So, and you're right, it is hard to find. And I recommend when you're buying unusual spices that you go buy them in bulk and just get what you need, because you might not want a whole jar of it. I use a lot of chili powders because I like them. Okay, we're going to put this in a blender and blend it up until it's smooth.
Hey, Kim, Cheryl wants to know if you can't use onions, do you have any recommendations for other vegetables to develop flavor other than increasing the garlic?
You know, you could probably just try it without an onion, or maybe try onion powder. I don't know. Leeks are in the onion family too, so if you use the white part of a leek, that might work. Or just leave the onion out altogether. It'd be interesting to see, because the onion gives it flavor, but all the other things really give it a lot of flavor.
And Betty wants to know if she can use a clove if she doesn't have allspice.
Yes, you could use a clove. Okay, so I'm going to turn this on. And I'm going to turn this down to low, because this is just going to simmer. Look how dark it is. I don't know if you can see this. I'm going to try to get it underneath the camera so you can see. It's really dark and chocolatey. And depending on the kind of chocolate you use, it can be darker or lighter. If you're using a Dutch chocolate versus just a regular cocoa powder, it'll be a little bit darker. Here's the thing. When I made this according to what I like. Not what you like, but what I like. So if you wanted a little bit more chocolatey, you could put a little more chocolate in it. If you want a little more, I forgot to put does this have lime juice in it? No, it doesn't. If you need a little more acid, you could add lime juice to it. No, I didn't add the lime juice. I didn't. I thought I had lime juice in it. I got so many ingredients going on here. That's the thing about mole sauce. It is like wild with ingredients. So my oldest daughter made this a couple nights ago, and she loved it, and she loves potatoes. So she put it on top of her potato. So if you make a lot of mole sauce and you aren't using it for an enchilada casserole, you put it on top of a baked potato with some black beans and peppers. You know, you don't always have to put it in a wrap. All right, so I'm just going to let that sit and bubble and kind of cook a little bit, because you want the flavors to develop. The longer you cook it, the better the flavor it's going to have. So I'm going to move this off to the side, and I'm going to start the enchilada filling. So when I make an enchilada casserole, I usually put a lot of things in it. I put soy curls, I put sweet potatoes, I put white potatoes. I do different things every time. It depends on whatever I have in my refrigerator. And I put it in my tortillas and roll it up and put an enchilada sauce over the top. But today I'm just doing something really basic. I'm using black beans and onions and peppers. But you really can make any kind of a filling you want.
Hey, Kim.
Yeah.
Marcy says she always breaks her corn tortillas. How can you fold them without breaking them?
That's a good question. That's what I was just going to get to. You read my mind, Marcy. So I have this. It's a tortilla warmer. and you can get them online. You can buy them at the grocery store, Mexican restaurants. So what I did is I took a wet towel and I put it in, and I wrapped the corn tortillas in the wet towel, just like that. And I microwaved it for about 2 minutes, and it's really warm. And if you put the top on this, it'll keep it warm, so they should be able to roll really nicely. So right now, before you make your filling, wrap your tortillas in a towel, stick them in the microwave for a couple of minutes, 10 of them, and just let them sit. They'll kind of steam and get soft. The other thing you can do, you can buy one of these. These are kind of cool. You can put your tortillas in these in a wet towel, tuck them in here, and microwave it. I bought this online too. More of my gadgets that I have. So tortillas, let's just talk about them real quick. You know, if you've watched my shows, you know that I like to use the Food for Life sprouted corn tortillas. They are very hard, and they oftentimes crack when you roll them, so you have to steam these, have to. And they're kind of hard to work with, but I really like them. They make great chips. But what I really like is I stood in line yesterday because of COVID. Trader Joe's always has a line. I stood in line yesterday for, I don't know, probably 20 minutes because I had to have these Trader Joe corn tortillas. They're half corn and they're half wheat, and they roll really nicely. You don't even need to steam them. They had blue corn. See, you can see how bendable they are. So go wait in line at Trader Joe's if you have one there. They only let so many people in the store, so it's a little bit cumbersome. All right, so I'm going to turn this on, heat it up, because I'm going to saute my onion. I'm using a red onion, just you can use any kind of onion. Red onions are nice and sweet. I'm going to saute those, but I'm not going to stop there. I'm going to use a red pepper. I know I always tell you to get your pan good and hot, but mine's not right now. And then I'm going to use a poblano pepper. And you probably wonder why they're cut so perfectly, and it's not because I have awesome cutting skills. It's because I have a Vidalia chop wizard. So I chop everything ahead of time. So that's a poblano pepper. I took the seeds, I took the ribs out. But if you want it spicy, leave some of the ribs and the seeds in. And we're going to saute that. I'm going to not forget my lime. Citrus really helps food, helps flavors pop. So if you're trying to cut back on salt, use your lemons and use your limes. Use the zest on it too. I'm not using the zest tonight, but you certainly can. So I'm using about a half of a lime. I love limes. Oh, I know what I wanted to ask people. My daughter told me that. Make sure I ask this tonight. So I come up with these recipes just because I pick the things that Nelson and I really enjoy, and a lot of people have enjoyed in our Jumpstart. But give me ideas for what you would like to cook together. I have some ideas. I was thinking of doing a yogurt show. I was thinking of doing desserts. We could make a couple of desserts. So give me ideas of things that you want to learn about, and I will come up with a recipe. So then I'm going to add, I think this has smoked paprika and cumin powder. You don't need to put a lot of spices in this because it's already in the mole sauce. Turning that up a little bit, it's not bubbling. And I put a pinch of salt in there too. I also got a can of tomatoes that has no added salt. So if you're being careful with salt, you know, really be mindful of tomatoes because that's where you can get a lot of sodium and you don't even know you're getting it. So we've got my spices going. And really all you want to do is get these onions a little translucent, tender, and then you don't really need to take it any further than that. I'm going to put some garlic in here. Smells kind of like a smoky, citrusy smell. I've made this so many times in the last 2 weeks and I'm still not sick of it. So, all right, I'm going to throw my black beans in there. I know I might be going a little faster than some of you guys, but that's okay. Stop me, ask me questions. And give me ideas. I need ideas for what we can start building next week and the week after. Next week we're making pad thai. I'm excited about that. And so at the very end, I can never make a stew or a filling without throwing greens in. I throw greens in everything, and I said a couple of cups. I don't know what kind of greens these are. Nelson and I just joined a CSA, and we get all these greens. I don't know. I know some of it's kale, but I think it might be Swiss chard. Not sure what all it is, but I chopped it up because we have so many greens in our refrigerator. And I strongly recommend that if you don't have a garden, that you look into joining a CSA, because every week you get a box and you don't know what's going to be in it. And last week we got a lot of greens, we got radishes, strawberries, we get everything that's in season.
Hey, Kim.
Yeah.
Laura suggested curried mock chicken salad would be a good recipe to do.
Curried mock chicken salad.
And Linda suggests Thai and Indian recipes. And Vicky has a good waffle recipe.
A what recipe?
Waffle recipe.
Ooh, a waffle recipe. Okay, send them my way, you guys. You know my email, kcampbell@Plant Pure Nation. Send them to me. Or kitchen@Plant Pure Nation Live. Either way, I get them. Okay, so I think that's probably good enough because we're going to bake it. It's starting to bubble. Oops. So now I'm going to make the tortillas, and I'm going to put them, this is going to be my casserole pan. So I had, with this recipe, I had a lot of filling compared to how many tortillas I had. So I'm going to show you a little trick that you can do with the extra filling. That's going to keep bubbling. So you want to use about 1/4 cup of filling. Actually, I did that wrong. I want to show you how I do it. So I'm going to move this over here. First thing you want to do is you want to coat this with some mole sauce. In a typical traditional Mexican restaurant, you know what they'll do with it? I'll go ahead and do it. They'll actually dip it in just like this. And they'll get, I'm going to make a mess, and they'll get mole sauce all over it. I'm not going to do that. I just wanted to show you the first one. I'm just going to line the bottom of the pan with the mole sauce, because you're going to get a lot of it that way. And this is a big recipe, so you're going to have plenty of mole sauce, so use it liberally. Then take your filling, put it on top of your tortilla, wrap it. And these Trader Joe tortillas are really strong. They don't fall apart and they don't crumble. So we'll add a little bit of mole sauce to the top.
I can't see it.
You can't see? I'm going to move it. Is that better? Okay. We have to see the visuals because our camera work is so awesome. Can you see it now? Bring it forward here. Okay. So you want to roll it. And you're going to get, I don't know, you're probably going to get 10 to 12. You notice I'm just drenching this in the mole sauce. Also, I didn't do this because I've made this so many times, but taste it and adjust. So if you need a little more salt, start out with a small amount of salt. I did add salt to mine. If you want more lime juice, you can do that. Spice. If you don't like spice can get worse the longer it cooks and the longer it freezes. So if you think something's a little spicy and then you bake it, it's going to get a lot more spicy. So put your filling in there. And I used 1 can of beans for this, which is about 1.5 cups. You could use pinto beans if you didn't have black beans. Beans were hard to come by a couple of weeks ago. Okay, so they had blue corn tortillas, so I have sort of a bluish, purplish tortilla. And then I'm definitely going to have a lot of filling left for these. And I would say this serves about maybe 4 people, 4 to 6 people, probably 4 people. Nelson and I are big eaters. And I think too, when you are switching over to plant-based, you eat more food because it's not as dense and it's not as heavy. There's no cheese in this. Okay.
Kim, Becky wants to know how could you cut down the spice if it's too spicy?
I don't think this is a really spicy recipe, but if you think it's too spicy for you, I probably would maybe take out, cut back on the chili powder just a little bit. So instead of 3 tablespoons, you could add a tablespoon and a half, cut it in half and see what you think. Be careful not to cut out your chili powders too much though, because then you're going to lose the flavor of a mole sauce. So, all right. So I got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If I had a bigger pan, I could go a lot further with this, but because you don't want to sit here and watch me roll these all night long, I'll stop there because my pan is smaller. But you could easily do 10 to 12 of these. So if you have leftover filling, here's what I suggest. Well, you could put it in the refrigerator and you could have it on top of your baked potato, or you could just have it by itself or over rice. But what I'm going to do is sneak it in the sides. I'm going to really bump up this casserole. You can get it in between also. Just like, I don't know about you guys, but I cannot wait to go out to eat. Nelson and I have not been out to eat at all since this whole thing started. I went out and bought a Domino's pizza last week with no cheese on it, just vegetables. That was the first time we did anything outside of our house, so I guess we just need to venture out a little bit more. All right, I'm going to stop there, and then we'll douse this in a lot more mole sauce.
So Cheryl wants to know, can you do a second layer, or would you suggest not to do that?
You could, but I think it might make it a little bit mushy. I would just get a bigger pan or get a small pan and make 2 batches and freeze one, because these will freeze really nicely. I don't know if I would double the layer. I don't know. It still would taste the same. You might get a little different texture, but might be a little more mushy. All right, so this is just what I did, and I didn't put these in your recipe. I saved about a cup of mole sauce, 3/4 of a cup, and I just left it off to the side because when this gets done baking, I'm going to put these in the oven. When this gets done baking, you might want to throw some more on it. Do not bake these for a long time. Last weekend we made these, we had company, and I left them in the oven and they got really dry and they started to break. And it tasted okay, but it was so much better when the mole sauce is liquidy and smooth. So only put these in the oven just long enough to warm them up and maybe bubble a little bit, but you don't want to dry them out. So your oven should be at 350. If I didn't tell you to preheat your oven, it should be at 350. I'm going to stick this in for about 15 minutes. And I'm not going to tell you any stories while it's cooking because I have a finished version. So my finished version looks like this. And you can see it dried out a little bit. So I kept a little extra sauce because the sauce is really good. You want to just kind of put that over the top. This is my, it's an older stone pan that I got from Pampered Chef, and I know it's a little bit hard on the eyes, but the more you use a stone pan, the nicer it gets. It doesn't stick. I highly recommend stone baking pans. So, and then you can put this on the table. If people want to put this on top, they can. I'm going to garnish it with cilantro. And I didn't put this in your recipe, but I'm going to put mangoes on top of it because mangoes are kind of sweet and sour, and it kind of goes really nice with enchiladas. And then we'll have some avocados. Put some of those on. I'm going to spoon it out so you guys can see how pretty it is. And that's it. Big spatula. Move this over here. That. Sometimes they tend to fall apart when I'm pulling them apart, but oh, that came out really nicely. And again, it's because you don't want to over bake these. You want them to be real. I'll put this over here. Really kind of soft. So something else I discovered. I don't know if I've shared this in a show, but there's a plant-based yogurt. It's by Kite Hill. And it's, I'll put my glasses on so I can read it to you.
So Marcy is suggesting dessert recipes with vegetables because she's trying to fake her oldest son out because he won't eat vegetables.
Sounds like an avocado key lime pie, maybe. That would be fun. So just keep feeding him. Lots of different stuff, Marcy. Marcy's my niece. She's joining us. So this is almond milk Greek style yogurt. So what they do is they take the yogurt and they strain it so they make it even thicker. And the only ingredients in this are almond milk, tapioca starch, pectin, locust bean, agar, and live active culture. And this is unsweetened. So what I would do is put just a little bit of that on top of the enchiladas. And you can find this at Whole Foods. You can find, I found it at my food co-op. So, and that is it. I hope you've got your nice dinner ready and you're all set to go. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate you coming and cooking along. Please share all your pictures. Tag me and let us know how you like the recipes. I'll see you back here next
Kim.
week.
Yeah, I was going to say, what are we doing next week?
I'll see you back here next week for vegan pad thai. Easy vegan pad thai, super easy. My daughter Laura is going to be joining us because she loves this recipe, and it'll be a lot of fun. So thank you for joining us tonight. Have a safe, healthy weekend.